Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our Salesforce Admins webinar, Navigate Your Salesforce Career. I am Rebecca Starr on the Admin Marketing at Salesforce, and I am joined by Mike Gerholtz, Director of Admin Evangelism at Salesforce. And I'm super excited to be bringing you this awesome session that was actually rated #1 at Dreamforce in the admin track. So let's get started. But before that, of course, we have our forward-looking statement, just reminding you to please make any purchasing decisions based on currently available feature and functionality. Shouldn't be an issue today since we're not talking about anything related to that. And just a quick reminder to connect with us online. You can find us on Twitter at Salesforce Admins No I. Also use hashtag AwesomeAdmin to join our conversations. And we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube with Salesforce Admins. Lastly, make sure to bookmark our website, admin.salesforce.com, to get the latest and greatest from the blog and our admin podcast and more webinars like this. And just a quick reminder that we are recording this session like we do all webinars, and you'll be able to find the recording on the same page that you registered for this webinar. And we'll also be posting the slides right there. So it's bit.ly/SalesforceCareer. And lastly, definitely join the admin webinar group in the Trailblazer community. That's where we take all questions and we'll answer some of them live if we have time, but we'll also be in there after the webinar, keeping the conversation going and helping answer all the questions you may have. So now I'm going to pass it over to Mike to talk about the agenda and get us started.
Thanks, Rebecca. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about a few things. One, I'm going to start off with the Salesforce Economy, and then really jump into talking about how you can build your skills, and then move beyond building your skills to a few other things that I feel like Salesforce admins should know about. We'll conclude with a wonderful resources slide to help you kind of continue moving forward. And then, of course, as Rebecca mentioned, we will jump into some Q&A. And if I don't get to your question, go ahead and post it after the webinar, and I will be sure to check the Trailblazer community after this to continue the conversation there. So, a few of you might have been in the breakout session at Dreamforce or talked through this, but I want to talk through the slide for a second because I feel like, you know, as an admin evangelist myself, I get a lot of questions about navigating your career. And I know my team also gets a lot of questions about navigating your career. And often the questions are really centered around, like, how do I do this one thing correctly? How do I do this one thing right to essentially put all of the puzzle pieces together? And the more that we get asked that question, the more that we kind of had time to reflect back on it and think about it, that everybody's career, everybody's skill sets are really different. And it's kind of wrong to think of how do I put all of the puzzle pieces together correctly, because they're not. Everybody's puzzle is a little bit different. And so what I want to do is really shift your thinking less about puzzle pieces and putting them together correctly, but more think of like Lego blocks. I loved playing with Lego blocks as a kid. I loved to get I had a big orange pumpkin pail, so it was very timely for this time of year. And I would dump it out on the living room floor, and I would build all kinds of stuff. So the cool thing about Lego blocks, and kind of this metaphor, in my opinion, is that one day a block could be part of a ship, and the other day, if I tore that ship apart and made an airplane, that same block could be there. And I think if we look at how we navigate our career, how we build our skills, you know, skills are like Lego blocks, and there's a lot of transferable skills as we move through our careers, both in Salesforce and in joining the Salesforce ecosystem. And I feel like that metaphor works really well. So we'll jump in the next slide. So just kind of a reminder of the overview. We'll talk about Salesforce Economy, just to kind of level set, just if you're new, I think it's good. We'll talk about building your skills, and then we'll talk about going beyond your skills. So things that we can do outside of just pure technical knowledge. So we'll get started. And the first one we'll get started with is the Salesforce Economy. So I think it's important to know that, starting off, why are you doing this? What's important? It's good to know that there's a whole economy that really thrives around Salesforce skills and technology. And so these are some of the numbers. You might have seen these. A few big numbers stand out, and I kind of want to break some of that down. So the first is, according to IDC, there's an estimated 3.3 million new jobs that'll be created by 2022. That's only 4 years away. That's not that far out, and that's a lot of jobs. So that means it's very robust. There's a lot of new opportunity. And the cool thing is Indeed.com listed 2 of the top 10 jobs in 2017 as Salesforce admin and Salesforce developer. And, I think if you look back, growing up as a kid, going to school, having a career counselor, usually the top 10 jobs were astronaut or, scientist. And to think that 2 of the top 10 jobs are actually in this economy and are very attainable for everyone is a really cool thing. And then the other number I want to pull out, because I think GDP impact and social impact are really cool numbers. They're almost too large to fathom, but the 2.5 million Trailblazers, and those are people that are a member of our Trailblazer community, which is where you can go to ask questions, by the way, but are also individuals that are on the same journey as you, and they're looking to take kind of their Lego blocks and maybe rearrange them in a certain way to move within their company or move within their ecosystem. And I feel like that's a very empowering number, because now you're not on this journey alone. Now you're with somebody, and you're with 2.5 million other people that are doing it as well. So I know I talked a lot about admin developer, but if we go ahead to the next one, I do want to talk about that there's really multiple career paths available in this ecosystem. And we have a great website. You can go to trailhead.salesforce.com/career-path. And if you're interested, if you're in one of these roles, you can kind of dive into it. Maybe it helps you have a little bit more of a meaningful conversation with your manager or your organization. Or if you're looking to change roles, right? If you're looking to kind of move in the spectrum from admin to developer, what are some of the career paths? What are some of the skills that are available? The reason I bring this up is I feel like everything that I'm going to talk about in the webinar applies to both, or actually all 6, I'm sorry. And because of that, you don't really have to deep dive into each single one, right? So I don't have to talk about a separate career path for a sales manager versus a marketing manager, because I think once you're talking at the fundamental level of how do we navigate this and build those skills, we're actually moving through all 6 of those career paths. But I just wanted to let you know that, in terms of the ecosystem, it's a huge thriving economy, and there's more than just admin developer that's available to you. So let's move on and kind of talk about actually building your skills, which is, usually the meat of every presentation that people want to know about a little bit more. And really the first part of that starts with Trailhead. So if you're not already logged in, if you haven't earned a single badge on Trailhead, that's okay. You can start today. Trailhead is the fun way to learn Salesforce. And I have to tell you, having been in Salesforce ecosystem since 2006, it is so refreshing to have the ability to log in, build things on the platform, have a very guided learning experience, but then also have the platform kind of tell you yes or no, you built this and it's time to move on, or no, you haven't, please go back and reread it. Because when I first started as a Salesforce administrator, we had PDFs to learn by, we had different, online help forums to kind of go to, And it, you know, it was a little bit of kind of figure it out as you go. And so you can get good that way. And experimentation, definitely trying new things out is one way to learn. But you kind of don't have a very guided way of doing it. And I love that everything now is on Trailhead, including our credentials. It's a great way for you to maintain your credentials. And it's a great way to just kind of get started. And we do have badges there that help you get into learning on Trailhead, because I think that's very important. And then also outside of just Trailhead, there's a lot of great farther out learning that you can have. We actually include it in the Trailhead Trail Mix for this webinar as well. So Trailhead is the place we go to learn the Salesforce skills. But I want to move ahead and really talk about, like, so at your organization, if you're Salesforce admin, developer, somebody who's looking to really grow your career on the platform, I think it's important to explore what really counts at your company. And I feel like I see this a lot in some of the questions that come in on the Trailblazer community, in that these are the 4 things that I really feel admins need to sit down with their leadership, with their organization and do. So let me go through those. The first is, you know, company mission, values, and competition. So there's always going to be a question of, we got Salesforce and I need to roll it out to my users and I want to make sure they use it. Great. The easiest way to do that is align the use of Salesforce to your company mission, to company values, to how you're going to use it in differentiation versus your competition as a competitive advantage. That helps people understand. They joined your organization because they felt the, you know, a driving mission towards what your company is trying to achieve. And Salesforce is a tool to help you achieve that. So 2, along those lines, leadership goals and measures, right? So all day long, I can give you links to the adoption dashboard that's on the App Exchange. But if you haven't sat down with your leadership and really defined what are their goals for the use of Salesforce, what are their goals and measures in terms of efficiency that they want to get out of it. So, you know, if you think of it, you can buy the world's fastest car, but if you still take the longest route getting to your location, all the fastest car is going to do is give you a different car to get there. So if you're not thinking through what your goal and measure is to achieve that, you're really kind of being short. And I think that's where you can help drive that as an admin. And then the third, you know, this comes hand in hand with working with marketing and marketing organizations a lot, is how do your customers engage with you? What is the current customer cycle and what are areas for improvement? And this is where you can help. So, you know, is there a phone that people have to call? Is there, you know, if you can believe it, I worked at an organization where the company had a phone line and every log had to be logged on a spreadsheet. And so the dissemination of that information wasn't very helpful. We kind of understood how our customers engaged with us, but what we needed to do is understand how our use of Salesforce could help us engage with our customers. And then number 4 is really, how do your users succeed and get paid? So at the end of the day, if you're rolling out a new system, or maybe you're re-implementing Salesforce, what are those goals that your users have, and what is the fear of change that you can help them work through? Because everybody wants to be successful at their job. So understanding that and kind of helping to align that way, really one of the, I think, great Lego blocks that you can kind of add to your skill set. Okay, so outside of exploring what really counts at your company and getting skills on Trailhead, I think there are things that you can do that go beyond Trailhead. And when I think of beyond Trailhead, I think of, well, I've done a lot of the apps, or I've done a lot of, you know, the modules. What else can I do? And so I'll start in the middle. I think build fun apps to get experience. So one of the stories that I love to tell is, I want to say it was around 2012. We had a really bad winter in Iowa, and it was over the holidays. So I started binge watching a couple shows on Netflix, and then I decided to start keeping track of the seasons and episodes that I was watching. And, like anyone, I probably opened up a Google spreadsheet, and I got 2 lines into it and thought, I can make this a Salesforce app. And so I literally spent the rest of my holiday vacation building that app and kind of understanding how relationships happen in a database and the impact of putting a field on one object but not on another, maybe for reporting. And so I would encourage you, outside of just building those skills in Trailhead and doing the badges and completing them, go back, right? And I mean, nobody's ever going to ask you, why do you have 32 developer editions? I have 36. And I've got apps and some that are really cool. I'm working on an app to manage my house. Like, when did I last paint a room? When I changed the oil in the mower. And I know within the community, there have been individuals that built baby diaper changing apps. And so there's fun apps to do that get you kind of outside of the normal CRM and get your creative thinking going. So along those lines, I think curiosity is very important. I think if you're curious, about a product or feature, let that drive you in terms of getting extra skills, in terms of, increasing your learning. Too often I hear, but my company doesn't use this product or feature. Why should I have to learn about it? Well, if you're curious, there's no harm in learning about something that you could find fascinating that's on the platform. And I think curiosity really helps drive successful admins. And along those lines, networking and user groups, right? So we have a vast user group community, and there's also, a lot of hashtags and social groups online for those of you that are a little bit more remote. That is a great place to go and connect, and especially connect with others within your local community that may have the same problems business-wise that they're trying to solve as you do. And then, of course, networking, right? So once you get to the user group, you can't be afraid to walk up to somebody and say hi, hang out, talk about, features or products that you're interested in. And I think really to do that, one of the things I put at the top of the slide is improv classes. So I've started taking improv classes probably 5 years ago. And I think they're super, super helpful in terms of just being comfortable presenting in front of others, being comfortable giving presentations, being comfortable as a public speaker. Because a lot of what you will do as an admin is, teach users, which requires you to stand up in front of a bunch of people, present to executives or stakeholders, which requires you in standing up, talking about information or apps that you built, or leading meetings to gather requirements. And so that's also why I put public speaking and business writing up there. If by chance you know of, a workshop or community college in your area that has public speaking or business writing classes, a lot of times they'll offer them as like a 1 or 2 Saturday thing. It's kind of great to go to, even if you've been in the professional world for a while, to hone your skills, especially in public speaking, because, no one's born a great public speaker. It's not a skill that really any mammal ever really does. And so it's something unique to humans that we do. And business writing, especially important because you will do a lot of documentation, you will do a lot of user training and a lot of communication about changes. So those are beyond Trailhead. But let's really talk about some of those things and move beyond just the skills of learning and give us that other kind of Lego block in our skill building job world. So the first one is, I want you to think of yourself as a brand. And this goes back to a long time ago, especially starting when Facebook, Twitter came out online. I want you to go to the library or borrow a friend's computer that's not logged in, and I want you to Google yourself, type in your name. And the reason I say go to the library or borrow a friend's computer is because, when you're signed in to Google, Google tries to return relevant results based on your location, based on all the information they have about you. And so I literally signed out of a laptop and borrowed one, I think at a Trailhead event, and I typed in my name, which is the gift you see on the left, and the page results, which you can see scrolling. And that's the result of, years and years and years of making sure that my online presence was built around me being a Salesforce administrator. So images are of, Twitter, Instagram, the podcast that I have, and blog posts, everything around that says, hey, this person is super interested in Salesforce. And the reason I bring that up is it's important to understand kind of what your brand is, what's out there on social about yourself, what's easily accessible for other employers. And I want you to think about what you're saying and what you should be saying. So that is all helps bring people around you that want to help you. So if I go to a platform or somebody's interested and they search my name and I'm asking a Salesforce question or I'm bringing Salesforce advice, they know legit, this person has been doing this for a while and it's very easy for them to find me. The other part that I want to talk about is when you go into an interview. So moving beyond just what you see and do online, but actually when you're interviewing. So go ahead one slide. So big thing to think about, especially with your interview, is, I want you to remember that interviews are two-way conversations and to come with questions. So perhaps it's just me, but I was kind of raised in an era of you show up on time, but also the interview is to make them like you. And I think, the big gut check you have to have with yourself is, especially when you're showing up to an interview, do I like the office? Do I like the area? What are the people like that are working? Are they sitting at their desks? Are they happy? Does it look like a fun environment I can show up to every day? Is it somewhere that I want to work? And so think of it as a way to also be interviewing the company. So come with questions, right, that don't seem apparent. And the biggest thing, research is not optional. So, there could be a point in time when it was hard to learn about companies. It's very easy to learn about companies, and it's very easy to learn about their mission and their value and their goals. And I think that's important because you want to make sure as an employee of that company, will you be happy? Do you also agree with the mission and value and goals, and why do you want to work there? And then think of it as really an opportunity to kind of pitch yourself. So they may have an idea for a Salesforce admin or developer that this is the position that they have in mind. But really it could be an opportunity for you to expand that position, right? And give them a vision for what you're bringing to the table. And then along those lines, back to building fun apps, have sample apps ready, or come ahead to the interview with, here's an idea of a sample app that I've built, because I think of it like if you were going to hire a chef, which I would love to be able to hire a chef. But if you're going to hire a chef, you kind of wouldn't sit down with them, ask them a couple questions, and then hire that person. You'd probably ask them to cook a dish or probably one of your favorite dishes to see what their use and how they use ingredients and if that's in line with what you want. And so I think sample apps in the same way, like come as a Salesforce administrator as somebody who's going to build, who's going to show them a sample app and give them a login to a developer org and, maybe build something fun that way. Okay, so one of the last few slides here is just kind of really how can you navigate your career outside of this webinar? And the first one is always network, right? So whether you're online, whether you go to a user group meeting or a community event, take time to introduce yourself to others. And then the biggest thing that I always like to do is I like to ask why somebody either does their job or works for that company. I don't ask how they do their job. I ask why because I want to know kind of their driving motivation behind what they do. And I think that gives you a little bit more insight, because it also tells you whether or not people are happy at the career that they're at, or at the company they're at, and it can help guide you. And of course, I want you to remember, much like Lego blocks, your path is going to be very different than others' career path, right? So I literally started off selling, high-end men's sweaters and baseball cap and test prep, and then became a Salesforce admin. And I think that path is probably really hard to replicate. So I don't want you to think that there's necessarily one exact path that you have to go to. And of course, like the next slide says, back to how I kind of kicked off the webinar, I want you to think Lego blocks, not puzzle pieces, because there's no one right way to put things together. And with Lego blocks, you can put them together in many different ways. And then, of course, outside of this, it's really not about how many Lego blocks you have, but really what you build with your Lego blocks. So with that, I will kick it over to Rebecca. We can go through the resources slide and pull up the community and see where the questions are.
Thank you, Mike. That was great. Loved hearing about this new strategy to look at building with Lego blocks instead of puzzle pieces. So here are some resources. We have the trail mix, bit.ly/career trail mix, that you can go take. We have a blog post on the same topic, as well as a podcast and a story. So take a screenshot of this, but also we'll be posting the slides in the recording, so you'll be able to get these resources afterwards as well. And then just wrapping up, again, we are in the Trailblazer community, bit.ly/admin webinar group. So post your questions there if you have any. And at the end of this webinar, there'll be a GoToWebinar survey that'll pop up. So please take the time to answer a few questions. And then you'll be able to find everything, recording and slides, soon at bit.ly/Salesforce Career. So I just want to kind of kick it off with a question, Mike.
Sure.
So I love this kind of new strategy, new way of thinking of building your career. And I'm wondering if you have a good story or example of someone who's really kind of built their career using Lego blocks instead of puzzles.
So I think the good news is that we actually have a lot of stories about it. In the story link that you just mentioned on the previous slide, there's at least 3 on there. And if you haven't heard of Zach Otero, I feel he's a really good use case around kind of rethinking where he was and the skills that he has, because I feel a lot of things are transferable. So listen to the podcast, because it's incredibly inspiring. Zach used to work in a meat slicing company that was actually built into a cave in Missouri, and used Trailhead, listened to the podcast, and found out he had a lot of transferable skills that helped him kind of move into, I believe he's a Salesforce consultant now. So I think that's kind of the first one that pops to mind. And I also saw there's a question in the community about one location to see which dev apps you've created. So I'm going to kind of peel that apart as best I can. So within every org, I know from the setup menu in Lightning, there's an app manager, and that will help you see what apps you've built in that org. Across developers, developer editions, I would recommend I use something called LastPass to keep my username and passwords kind of like, somewhat rememberable. But LastPass seems to do it. And for developer orgs, you can have the same email address. It just has to be a different username. So the easiest way to do that is I always use my first name at my last name dot, and then like the month I created it, or you can use, something interchangeable. It just has to be something you remember. So, Usually I'll spin up a developer org for each release that we have. So I'll do like Mike at spring18 dot, developer or something. It just has to be in the form of an email. So I know sometimes that kind of trips people up when they're creating developer orgs.
Well, thank you, Mike, for answering those questions and for presenting this amazing session. I definitely appreciated it, and I believe a lot of admins will get a lot out of this to help them navigate their Salesforce career. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up and see you next time.